The Angels split the series with the White Sox after more poor pitching. And it's Fan Mail Friday, and you ask, is it time to move on from Taylor Ward? And do the Angels have a chance to trade for Lucas Giolito from the White Sox? You've got questions. We've got answers. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and even on Sirius XM. And of course, the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. Let us know how you're feeling about the show, what you like about it. We appreciate that. 5 stars, please. And if you're watching on YouTube, you know it helps out the channel so much. If you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and then comment below. We love getting into your comments and responding to you on the video side. And if you're on the audio side, come on over to YouTube, jump into the comments for this episode. Hey, on today's show, we are going to be answering your questions for Fan Mail Friday, and we're going to be recapping that White Sox game from yesterday. And just to let you know, my name is John Frisch. I'm one half of the Super Halo Bros and Locked On Angels, and my brother Mike is being a good dad. He's out there at his daughter's final basketball game of the summer, so he's out there cheering her on and rooting for her. Hopefully she can get a win, unlike our Halos yesterday. Good grief. Let's get into the recap here. The Angels dropped this game on Thursday 9-7. They split the series with the White Sox, and unfortunately, they're going to have to win tonight against the Diamondbacks, who I believe Corbin Carroll is kind of a question mark, so we might fortunately miss him at the time of recording. It's going to be on Apple TV Plus, by the way, so be sure that you get that free subscription that's floating around out there to like 2 months of Apple TV Plus so you can watch the game. So the Angels dropped this one 9-7 against the White Sox. Patrick Sandoval just had a terrible outing to start the game. Then he suddenly gets locked in and ends up striking out 8 over the course of the game. But it was 5 innings pitched for Patrick Sandoval, 7 earned runs. We had some good highlights here from the offense as well. Ohtani, in the bottom of the 9th, hit his 29th home run of the season. He now holds the franchise record for most home runs in the month of June at 14. He's also the first one since Babe Ruth to start a game and hit that many home runs in the month of June. Surprise, surprise, Ohtani breaking more Babe Ruth records, or at least matching them. Mike Trout went 3 for 5. Looked like the timing on his fastball was perfect. He was hitting that fastball really well. Mickey Moniak had a leadoff home run. Mike Moustakas got his first home run as an Angel, and Hunter Renfroe hit a 2-run home run. And that should have been enough. That should have been enough run support. But here's how things went down. Sandoval gave up a run off 2 singles and a wild pitch in the first inning. Both the singles had exit velocities of 72 miles per hour and 64.9 miles per hour. So that gives you an idea of what happened. Patrick Sandoval was getting blooped and dinky-dooed in that first inning. Moniak tied it up, of course. Sandoval gets through the top of the second just fine. That's when Mike Moustakas hits a home run. Theis gets on base through a single. Renfroe hits a 2-run homer. Trout and Ohtani K with Escobar and Velasquez on base, so they were not able to continue adding on, which is crucial later on because Patrick Sandoval gives up a single, a walk, a 2-run single. He strikes out Vaughn, Grandal singles. There's a pop out, another single, a hit by pitch. Ends up being a 6-run inning in the top of the third. Tons of soft contact that kind of fell in, just inside the foul line. And then there were some hard hit singles in there as well. So Sandoval is just having a day of it yesterday, having so much trouble. He only had 2 whiffs up to that point. So 2 swings and misses. Finally, he comes back in. He strikes out Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez. Trout makes an amazing home run robbery of Andrew Vaughn out in center field. He looks like 2012 Trout in Baltimore. Sandoval strikes out the side in the top of the 5th. So he found it again, but it was just too little too late. The way Sandoval ended up finishing this game, he had 11 whiffs and 20 called strikes to finish the game. Again, 5 innings pitched, 8 hits, 7 earned runs, 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts for Patrick Sandoval. Jose Soriano came in relief, was able to strike out the side in the top of the 6th. He strikes out 2 and gets out of the inning because Squid gets Robert on a bang-bang play to shortstop, to first base. Incredible arm from Andrew Velazquez out there. Bottom of the 7th, Trout has a leadoff double. Ohtani walks, Drury flies out, and Mike Moustakas hits into a double play. So that ends another chance at a rally. Chris Davinsky came in the top of the 8th, a ground out, a strikeout. But at this point, the Angels have 15 Ks, even though the score is so lopsided at this point. The top of the 9th is where things get frustrating for me because Jacob Webb came in. He immediately hit Luis Robert. That guy steals 2 bags. He steals second. He steals third. There's a great stab at first base by Mike Moustakas, 107 miles per hour off the bat. So that prevents Robert from scoring. But then he ends up scoring on the next hit. And then Andrew Vaughn was able to get to third off of that hit because Trout dove for it in center field. Again, trying to do 2012 Trout things. Maybe that was one too many. But that puts him on third base. Vaughn gets to third. It's 8-5 at this point. Then a wild pitch from Jacob Webb makes it 9-5. And here's where it gets a little bit frustrating. Taylor Ward flied out. Moniak struck out looking. Trout singled, and then Ohtani hit a 2-run home run. This is where it should have been 7-7. And if you saw my post-game video from yesterday, right after the game, I said this game was a whole lot of shoulda, coulda, woulda. And in this case, it was a whole lot of those 3 because Ohtani tied it up. Essentially, if Jacob Webb hadn't given up those 2 runs in the top of the 9th, it would have been a different ball game. Perhaps they could have walked it off with 2 outs or maybe taken this one into extras. We know how these day games always end up going that way, but that wasn't the case this time because Jacob Webb gave up those 2 runs. But Patrick Sandoval has got to get it together. He's somebody who was so good last season. So good. But his win-loss record didn't show it because he wasn't getting run support. Now it's the complete inverse of that this season, as he has 4 runs given to him by Moustakas and Renfroe and Mickey Moniak. It's 4-1. And he immediately squanders that with that 6-run inning against the White Sox. And I know sometimes you can't help how things are going to fall in, how things are going to bloop in and whatnot. But that guy has got to learn how to compose himself on the mound. It's one thing if there's an error or an issue with the defense behind you, but it's another thing to get frustrated over BABIP, batting average on balls in play, where these things are falling in, they're getting hit at 65 miles an hour, and they're finding gaps in the infield. That's baseball, bro. And you got to be able to move past that. You can't get to 0-2 and suddenly make it 3-2. Sandy has to activate the strikeouts. He's got to complete the strikeouts. He's got to level up. And in those moments, that's not what happened. Again, going from 0-2 to 3-2 way too many times for Patrick Sandoval. He's got to man up. He's got to be able to put what's happened behind him and focus on the issue at hand and take care of the hitter at the plate. And he just didn't do that in this one. Somebody we rely on so much last season and expected to do really well this season, especially after his performance in the WBC. Where did that Sandy go? That's what I want to know. And it's unfortunate the way this game shook out. Look, the Angels, again, I mentioned it earlier, if they want to get to 15 wins in June, they're going to have to win tonight against that first place Diamondbacks team. Mike and I are of the opinion that the Angels often rise to the occasion. And somebody had a great tweet about the betting odds. When the Angels are the underdogs, they always end up winning the game. And then when it's a game they should run away with, they squander it. And I feel like this series against the White Sox was one of those games where they squandered it. They should have walked away with 3 out of 4 this series. That's the best way possible after that loss on Wednesday night. Thursday, they should have walked away with that game. They had plenty of run support. The offense looked pretty strong. I know they went quiet there for a while, but guess what? White Sox have some good pitching too, and that's what happened in this one. So that's Thursday's game. Hopefully the Angels can go out there and get a win tonight. The Angels are playing the Diamondbacks, 6:38 Pacific time. You can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels. Coming up on Locked On Angels, could the Angels use a starter like a Lucas Giolito or a Kenta Maeda from the Twins? We're going to dive into the numbers, and we'll talk about all of that in just a minute. Hey, Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting in the MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets. That's up to $200. That's right. If you bet $20, you can land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. It's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to get the first home run. It's all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. Who doesn't like that? There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So just sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Locked On Everydayers, join us on Monday as we recap the weekend series against the Diamondbacks. They're in first place in the National League. This is going to be a tough series, and it's going to be a real prove-it series for our Halos. I expect some roster moves to be made to reinforce the missing pieces the Angels have right now. Hey, they're playing those Diamondbacks tonight, 6:38 Pacific time. You can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels. It is a Fan Mail Friday, and I'm happy to be here with you. Again, I'm John Frisch, one half of Locked On Angels. Mike is being a good dad, catching his daughter's last basketball game of the season. And since it is Fan Mail Friday, we've got a few voicemails here. Let's go to our first one for today.
Hey, boys, it's Cody out of Riverside. I'm calling to see if Taylor Ward has any trade value. Watching him is so frustrating, and I want to know if we can get anything for him. I would love to see Joe Adele and Mickey Moniak inside of our lineup for the next few years. See him grow. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the podcast. Go Halos.
Cody from Riverside, thanks for your voicemail, my friend. It's great to hear from you. Cody was asking, does Taylor Ward have any trade value? Because it would be great to be able to run out Mickey Moniak and Joe Adele in this lineup and see them much more often. Look, before we get into the Taylor Ward stuff, I just want to say, if the Angels want to win now, I think you got to call up Joe Adele. That's my personal opinion. Mike might disagree. I don't know how he feels about that, but I'm speaking on behalf of the show right now. You want some offense? You want a guy who can hit you some home runs and get on base and steal bags? Let's go with Joe Adele, baby. But let's get to Cody's question about Taylor Ward. And does he have any trade value? I looked it up. First of all, if we're going to talk value, let's talk about performance. On the field, when it comes to Taylor Ward's offense, this year he's worth 1 Baseball Reference WAR. He's batting .241. He's got a .313 on base percentage, .376 slugging, and a .689 OPS. That's good for an OPS plus of 90. So Taylor Ward right now is 10% under league average as a hitter. This came from our friends at angelswin.com on Twitter. And I like this tweet because Mike and I actually noticed this as well about Taylor Ward, and where he hits in the lineup seems to make a really significant difference. Listen to this. When he's batting first, he's had 238 plate appearances. He hits .232. He gets on base at a .307 clip, and he has a slugging percentage of .365. When he's batting fourth, which he's done 30 times this season, he's batting .379. He's got a .400 on base and a .483 slugging percentage. Now, remember, a .300 average, a .400 on base, and a .500 slugging is kind of the ideal line that you want. And Taylor Ward in the fourth spot is pretty darn close to that. When he's batting sixth, Taylor Ward has had 21 plate appearances. He's batting .316, a .333 on base, and a .684 slugging percentage. Now, let's compare Taylor Ward's current on-base percentage, again, .313, to some other leadoff guys around the league. Again, .400 is like elite in terms of on-base percentage. Look at Jose Altuve. He's got a .375 on-base percentage. Brandon Nimmo of the Mets, a .369 on base. Mookie Betts, who was named to the National League All-Star team, he's got a .355 on base. And Steven Kwan of the Guardians has a .337 on base as a leadoff guy. And I bring that up because is Taylor Ward doing his job as a leadoff guy? Not when you're swinging at 3-1 above the zone and popping out when you have Mike Trout and Shohei behind you. That's not getting the job done as a leadoff guy. Now, I brought this up last year, I believe, when we were talking about trades. It might have been on our old podcast for Super Halo Bros. But Taylor Ward does significantly better in day games. And I looked it up, the splits for this year. So far, he's been in 25 day games. He's batting .273, a .383 on base percentage, a .477 slugging percentage. That's good for an .861 OPS. And get this, his OPS plus during day games is 138, 38% better than league average. You know who plays a lot of day games, Cody? It's the Cubs. The Cubs are the ones who play a lot of day games. In fact, they've had 35 day games this year versus 43 night games. The Angels have only played 26 day games, and 27 if you count yesterday, and 56 night games. So if there's some value and a team wants Taylor Ward and he performs really well during the day, trade him to the Cubs. That's what I think. Now, in terms of defensive value, he's got 4 defensive runs saved and a 2.4 ultimate zone rating. That's a score that comes from FanGraphs, kind of compiles all of the defensive metrics of a player in the outfield. But we also contend that he's kind of played it safe in the outfield. He lets things fall in front of him. He's doesn't really make the diving play all the time. I mean, Mike Trout made a very costly diving play in yesterday's game, and that's going to score negatively against him. Now, if he made that, it would have been a run saved, right? So there's a give and take there. Taylor Ward plays a very safe, quote unquote, outfield. His contract is also of value. He's in arbitration through 2026, and he's a free agent in 2027. So to answer your question, Cody, is Taylor Ward worth something in terms of trade value? He's got modest production. He's got the years remaining on his contract, very controllable salary because he is in arbitration. He might be the guy who helps the Angels score somebody who's on a expiring contract. The Angels are going to need some rentals if they want to compete for the playoffs. And I think that Taylor Ward could be a good piece of the pie if he's part of a trade. Maybe he's part of a package, something like that. I think it would incentivize the Angels to include him in something and incentivize another team to want to trade with us. Hey, got a great question here. By the way, on YouTube, they changed everybody's names to their YouTube handles and their ats. I don't like that at all. So I'm sorry, Donald D3042. I'm sure your name is just Donald. So I got your question on YouTube in the comments. He said, thanks guys for doing a good job of keeping it real with the Angels. Thank you, Donald. Appreciate that. I like how the Angels went out to get more infield by getting 2 new players. Now I feel the Angels should get another starter and maybe move Jaime Barria back to the bullpen. I want to know your thoughts about this. So if the Angels add another starting pitcher, let's look at who they have now in their rotation. You got Shohei Ohtani, Reed Detmers, Patrick Sandoval, Tyler Anderson, Griffin Canning, and that 6th starter has been Jaime Barria. Now, if you were just to look plainly at the results of who's pitching the best, Tyler Anderson is the odd man out. He's the guy that you would want to move to the number 6 spot. But you're paying him $13 million a year to be a 6th starter and only pitch every once in a while. I don't think that's going to happen. So if the Angels get themselves another starter, and they absolutely should because they definitely need another starter, I think the Angels would go back to a true 6-man rotation with the addition of a new arm. Because right now, they're not doing all 6 pitchers every 6 days or every 6 starts. They're going through the rotation, and if there's not 6 days between Shohei Ohtani starts, that's when they use a guy like Jaime Barria. But if they add another arm to this rotation, I could see them going back to a 6-man rotation. They really need somebody behind Shohei Ohtani to be a 1-2 punch. Look, Detmers has been great over the last month. He's really turned his season around. But imagine another heavy hitter between Ohtani and Detmers. In this case, Jaime Barria would go back to long relief. I think it's time to say goodbye to Tucker Davidson because that's kind of been his role. He just has not been effective in that long relief role. And I know that people are saying, well, we got Tucker Davidson for Raisel Iglesias, but we have to stop looking at Tucker Davidson as the only thing to come out of that Raisel Iglesias trade. Because listen, $16 million a year is what Raisel Iglesias was owed. Now, if you take that $16 million and perhaps you give it to Matt Moore, who's making $7.5 million, and Carlos Estevez, who's making $6.75 million. You've taken one player who was iffy for us as a closer last season. I know in 2021 he was dominant. 2022, Raisel was not the same guy. Still good, don't get me wrong, but you've taken his salary and you divided it up between two great bullpen pieces. I think that was the right move. So I'm fine with saying adios to Tucker Davidson, especially because that trade was a year ago and it's out of my mind. And the Angels have used that money to double up on bullpen guys in Matt Moore and Carlos Estevez. And I think that they have had great results because they were able to use that salary from Raisel Iglesias and spend it on two worthwhile relievers. Hey, we're getting into our last set of questions, and we got another voicemail. Let's go to that right now.
Hey, Mike and John. This is Jonathan from Anaheim. I really feel strongly about this, but I think there's a hidden gem out there that the Angels could definitely trade for. Kenta Maeda is a free agent in 2024, and he's way better than his 2023 stats show. The main thing I'm looking at is his postseason experience. He has 37.2 postseason innings pitched with a 2.87 ERA and 44 strikeouts. Only gave up 2 home runs in that time. He's pitched in 2 different World Series, has 25 postseason appearances. The dude has ice in his veins during high leverage. And before his Tommy John, he was fighting for a Cy Young. So I think as a veteran that would reignite playing alongside Ohtani in the Japanese media, the Angels could get him for a pair of mid-level, maybe low mid-level prospects. And I really think he could be a useful piece of the Angels running on the final stretch of this season. So Terry, if you're listening, man, take a look at Kenta Maeda. Go Halos.
Jonathan from Anaheim, great name, by the way. I love questions like this because it makes me think as the host of Locked On Angels about these potential trades and if this would be a good target for the Angels. So Kenta Maeda, just so you know, he had Tommy John surgery in 2022, but I want to compare this year versus 2021 where he pitched last in the bigs. And so this year he's doing really well at getting guys to chase. He's got an incredible walk rate. He's getting guys to swing and miss. He's in the 57th percentile for whiff rate. If you go back to 2021, he had great average exit velocity when he gets hit. The hard hit percentage was not very high. The expected batting average was not very high. He wasn't getting barreled up. Unfortunately, in 2023, he's getting hit hard when hitters make contact on Kenta Maeda. But Jonathan makes a good point because the underlying numbers show that Kenta Maeda is not performing to his expectations. He's got really good expected numbers on his pitches, but the actual results are not great. So, for example, if you take a look at his slider, he's getting a 279 batting average against on his slider this year. The expected on that is 252. The four-seam fastball, which ranks up there in fastball spin as one of the best in the league, it's got a 421 batting average against right now when the expected is 273. So I'm encouraged by this. He's not performing to his capabilities. And number two, it doesn't seem like Tommy John has affected him in terms of velo because his numbers on his pitches, his miles per hour on his pitches from 2023 actually match the numbers from 2021. So I'm not concerned about the Tommy John. Now, playing alongside Ohtani, we've gotten this comment a lot, and I appreciate the viewers from Japan and our Japanese viewers who understand this and tune into Locked On Angels. There's an air of respect between Japanese players about not wanting to one-up the other or take over somebody's team or something like that. Because Maeda is Ohtani's senior, Ohtani would take more of a back seat there. Now, if this was a trade, that's different. It's different than another Japanese player choosing to be here and like signing a contract with the Angels. Instead, if there was a trade, they might be a pretty good tandem together. I could see that. And I love that Jonathan brought up Kenta Maeda's performance in the postseason. So he could be somebody that could help get us there at the end of the season. The Angels definitely need to add another starter. Speaking of other starters, Carl Kirby at Halo Dads LFL on Twitter. He's been a day one. Even before Locked On Angels, he's been listening to Super Halo Bros back when we did that podcast. So Carl, shout out to you. Thank you for this question. He said, I'm curious about your responses to this. What trade package would you put together to get Lucas Giolito? What are the Angels' biggest needs right now? Well, I think you nailed it, Carl. It's starting pitching. Let's take a look at Lucas Giolito's performance so far this season. He's got a 2.2 baseball reference WAR. He's 6-5, a 3.53 ERA, 108 strikeouts, and a 1.178 whip. He's great at getting strikeouts, whiffs, and not walking people. His StatCast numbers, he ranks really high in those categories. Now, the issue with Giolito is that contact is not great. When he gets hit, he gets hard. He gets hit hard, and those baseballs fall in for base hits when hitters make contact against him. Now, he is a free agent at the end of this season. Here's the issue with wanting to get Lucas Giolito or Dylan Cease or anybody from the White Sox. The White Sox are 4 to 5 games back of first place in the AL Central. They're 36-47 after beating us yesterday. The Twins, who are in first place, are 40-42. So the irony here is the White Sox are actually closer to first place in their division than the Angels are in our division, the AL West. The White Sox are closer to first place. Everybody in the AL Central has a losing record. It's horrible. What a terrible division. But I don't think the White Sox are going to be willing to sell because they're so close to possibly climbing back up in the standings and getting first place in a terrible AL Central. Now, let's say that the Angels and the White Sox are willing to make a deal. Maybe the White Sox will trade. I took a look at their top 30 prospects, and man, they might be the most positionally varied of top 30 prospects I've ever seen. They've got pitching, they've got outfielders, they've got infielders, they got a couple catchers, and a lot of them are set to arrive this year, next year for sure. There's a lot of guys that could come up this year but aren't quite there yet. But they have a lot of guys on the cusp of helping this team out. So if the White Sox were willing to do business, do the Angels have anything at all to help secure Lucas Giolito and anybody who could help the White Sox get into contention in the Central to maybe even win the division? Well, the White Sox rank 21st in batting average. That's .237. They rank 11th in home runs with 96, and they rank last in on-base percentage at .293. I looked at AAA, and I think Stefanik's a good on-base guy. Maybe they need a leadoff guy. Maybe he could be part of a package. Joe Adell could provide some offense for them, and maybe they could up that home run total in the Central. Maybe Trey Cabbage, who's hitting for a good average and can get on base, right? Any number of those guys might help them out. AA, there's not a lot of great value in terms of average or on-base percentage guys. Maybe they would want a top prospect like Edgar Caro, but again, they've got 2 catchers in their top 30. If you look to the majors, they're going to want somebody like Mickey Moniak and maybe even Matt Thaiss in addition to Mickey Moniak. They're going to want a player on that caliber if you want to get Lucas Giolito from them. So the question is, are we willing to do that? Are we willing to give up somebody on the major league roster who we're excited about, whether that's Moniak or Logan O'Hoppe or Zach Neto? And I think we aren't willing to give that up. So the Angels will have to get creative if they want to make the White Sox a trade partner. I'm just not sure that the White Sox are going to be willing to do business. Hey, I want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Again, the Angels are taking on the Diamondbacks tonight, 6:38 Pacific time at the Big A. You can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM with the SXM app. Just search Angels. Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. We're there for you all the time. Come on over to YouTube. If you're on the audio side, comment below the video. If you're watching, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe and get into our comments. We really appreciate your thoughts. Hey, on Monday, we're going to recap the weekend series against the Diamondback. It's going to be a tough one. Hopefully, the Angels can at least get 2 out of 3 in this one. We'll see what happens. Until then, my name is John. My brother Mike will be back here on Monday with us. Looking forward to having my bro back, my Super Halo bro. Until then, thanks for being here. We'll see you back here on Monday.